Please stand up, class. Miss Casio, please lead the prayer. Okay, good morning, class. Again, good morning, class. Okay, so before you take your seats, kindly arrange your chair and pick up the brushes or papers you see under your chair and put it on our trash bin at the back. Okay, go, class. Okay. Okay, you may now take your seats. Okay, before anything else, let me check your attendance first. Is there any absentees for today? Okay, very good. So, did I give you the assignment yesterday, class? So, okay, so please pass your assignment in a silent manner. Okay. So, before we proceed to our main topic for today, we will be having an activity called Pass the Message. So, kindly okay, so I will explain the mechanics for today's activity. So I have here a box, and inside this box are sentences written in a small paper. So our class will be divided into five groups, and since you have five rows, that will be your groups. And your leader, which is on the front seat, will pick one piece of paper inside this box, and they have 30 seconds to read and memorize the sentence written on that paper. So if I say go, it is the signal that you need to pass the message or the sentence to the member at your back, and the next player will also proceed or pass the message he or she received. And the last person at the back will go here on the board to write the sentence she or he received. So the fastest group with the correct answer will be our winner and will get additional 10 points to our another activity later on. So is my instruction clear, class? Okay, do you have any questions regarding to our activity? Okay, so leader, please come here and pick your sentence. Okay, now let's start. So leaders, please read and memorize your sentence or message in 30 seconds. Starts now. Okay, leaders, you only have 10 seconds left. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, time is up. Bring the piece of paper to the box again, leader. Thank you. Are you all ready, class? Leaders, are you ready? Okay. So you may now pass the message. Time starts now. They are starting to pass the message. Group 3 are now done. Okay, write your sentence on the board. Okay, all done. So, okay, we have a winner, class. So, who will be our winner for today's activity? Let me see. Okay, we have a winner. Our winner is Group 5. So, let's give them a round of applause. Group 5 will receive also 10 points for latest activity. So, alright. So, did you enjoy the activity, class? Okay, so moving on. So let's have a quick recap of our last discussion. So what is our lesson or what we discussed last meeting? Yes, Miss Castro. Very good. So you may take your seat. Now, anyone still remember what is communication is? Yes, Mr. Rios. Okay, very good. You may now take your seat. So, any idea about communication? Is there anyone? Yes, please. That is also correct, Miss. So I'm so glad that you still remember those ideas about the communication and give yourself a round of applause. So for today's lesson, we will be discussing the process of communication. The process of communication. So, as we discussed in our previous lesson, no one can avoid communication. So, therefore, it is one of the important part of our system, which is the life. And we need to understand that communication is a process which takes several steps to make sure that the sender's goal is achieved. Did you get that class? Okay. The model you see on the board is the process of communication. There are 8 elements. As you can see, you only see a 7th element and one is missing. So I will be discussing that missing element later on. So the first element in the process of communication is the sender. So, Miss De Leon, kindly read, can you open your book on page 25, class? Okay, Miss De Leon, please read the meaning of sender. Thank you, Miss De Leon. So, class, sender deliver the message. So, he or she also creates or imagine the message. An example of this is a teacher discussing the lesson to the students. So, the information comes from the teacher. So, therefore, the teacher is the sender or the source of the message. Understand that? Okay. So, our next element is the message. So, Miss Castro is reading the message. Thank you, Miss Castro. So, the message is the information or the idea conveyed or imparted by the source or the sender. So, this message may consist of sender's idea, thoughts, sentiments, views, opinions, or feelings. So, the nature of the message class can change depending on the medium you use and the audience for which it is meant. Okay, class. So, always remember that for communication to be successful, it is important that the listener or the reader understands the message. Is it clear, class? Okay. So another element is the encoding. So who wants to read? Just raise your hand and answer me in chorus class. Yes, Miss Balaibo. Very good, Miss Balaibo. Okay, so encoding is the step in the process of communication where the sender decides how she or he wants to convey the thoughts, ideas, and information. So as the sender, you must think of a way of how to communicate it. So it can be in a form of language, a text message, a spoken word, or some other methods that represent and transmitting the data or the message. So as to make encoding easier, it is imperative to know how or to know who is the receiver. So for example, you did something wrong to your sister and you want to know how sorry you are. So you think a way to represent your thoughts. So you may think of to write a letter or deciding to tell her personally or you may hug her or buy some chocolates or anything that you think will send her the idea that you regret your past actions. Did you get my point, class? Okay. So the next element is the channel. So class, the channel is the component of the communication that refers to the method or mode by which a source sends or transmits the message. So there are numerous categories that a sender may use to convey his or her thoughts, like verbal, non-verbal, personal. It can be also so non-personal and others. So it may be through writing or print, like letter or email. So let us look for this example. So if a man wants to propose to a woman he loves, so it is best that he does it in person and not just in writing or maybe in a phone call. Do you understand, class? So class, this is a type of error. It should be letter E, not I. It should be encoding, not encoding. Okay. So next up is decoding. So who wants to read? Yes, Mr. Aguila. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. So, class, a while ago, you have learned that the encoding is the process of assembling the information to make sure that the message is understood by the receiver and that is the source who does the process. So now, in decoding, it's another way around in decoding. So it is the receiver who decodes the message. So decoding is the analyzing, interpreting, and converting a coded message. So if the information class sent has been processed well, so meaning there was no error in its transmission of communication will be successful and will result class in both the source and the receiver understanding the same information. So for instance, class, a student entered the wrong class just because he saw his English teacher not knowing that his teacher is also a teacher in science. So no matter how much attention he pays in listening to the discussion of his teacher, he may never truly understand the topic. So that is an example of situation where a receiver may not able to decode the sentences or the messages. So is it clear, class? Okay. So let us proceed now to the next element, which is of the process of communication. So who wants to read? Okay, Miss De Leon again. Thank you, Miss Leon. So remember, class, the process of communication is incomplete without a receiver to lend and hear. So whenever a sender writes or says or sings or expresses anything, it's meant to be read or experienced. So the receiver is a crucial part of this process. So it is important class that the receiver is able to understand the message in the best possible manner for the objective to be achieved. So class, I have a question. Is the sender of the message can be also the receiver and vice versa? So vice versa means the receiver can be the sender and the sender can be also the receiver. Who say yes for that situation class? Okay, so I believe those who do not raise their hands says no. So let me explain this class. So for those who said yes, you are correct. And for those who said no, let me enlighten you. So a sender can be also a receiver, and the receiver can also be the sender. So in communication, we intended to relay the message from one person to another. So class, for example, Miss Jimenez, Miss Magno, and I are talking. So there are three persons involved, right? So if I convey the message to Miss Magno, so I will say the message to her. And so I am the sender, and Miss Magno is the receiver. And if Miss Magno transmit the message to Mr. Jimenez, that is the time that Miss Magno, which is the receiver a while ago, will be the sender of the message. That is Mr. Jimenez will be the receiver. And if Mr. Jimenez transmitted the message to me, and that is the Mr. Jimenez will be the sender and I will be the receiver. So it is the best example for that situation that the sender can be also the receiver and the receiver can also be the sender. So did you get my point class? Okay, good. So next is the feedback. So what is feedback? Yes, Mr. Jimenez. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jimenez. So the process of communication is a long one. So communication does not stop after a thought or idea is expressed or sentence or words is uttered. So class it creates ripples through time. So like a stone slung in a peaceful lake, feedback is one of the last stages of communication. So class remember that it's important to note that the sender judges the success of the communication process. So it is based on the feedback received. So he or she class needs to pay close attention. So also remember class that feedback may be right or wrong depending on how the receiver interpret or how this receiver reacts to the message. But this will give the sender a signal. So whether there is a need to modify the way the information is set to achieve the goal of making the information understood by the receiver. Okay now, so a while ago, I said that there's missing piece or missing element to this process of communication. So the last process of communication is the noise. So who wants to define noise in communication? Yes, Miss Balatigo again. Okay, thank you. So class, so noise based on Carol 2015 is like a secondhand smoke having negative impacts on people without anyone's consent. So it is also called interference, which does not only pertain to sounds that are irritating to hear, but also refers to anything that hinders the transmission of the message. So the noise can be categorized into two, which is internal and external class. So to give you some insight about these two categories, so internal noise. So this is the noise or anything that goes on in our mind. So that hinders you from understanding what the other person is telling you. So example, when your thoughts are occupied by what happened in the house that morning or a problem in school or an assignment. So the next one category is the external noise. So it is the noise you hear coming from your surroundings. So example of this noise is a crying sound from an infant baby or screaming of children playing on the street. So plus there are also several or some other types of noise. Not necessarily noise that you can hear, but that which causes misunderstandings between the or among the people communicating that we occur at a point of the communication process. So first noise is the semantic noise. So this is a barrier or hindrance transmission of the message because of the use of the words, sentences, or symbols that are not familiar to the other person. So, class it means that the speaker and the listener have different interpretations of the meaning of the certain words. So, example of this is the word weed. So, the word weed can be interpreted as an undesirable plant in the yard or an euphemism for marijuana. So next noise is the semantic noise. I mean syntactic noise class. So syntactic noise is a syntax, refers to grammar, structure, or set of rules that govern how words are combined in meaningful phrases and sentences. So class communication can be disrupted by mistakes in grammar, such as an abrupt change in verb tense in a sentence. So let's go to the next noise, the environmental noise. So environmental noise refers to the external noises that hinder the communication, such as drilling sound coming from the construction nearby, loud music from your neighbor, or people talking loudly. So once to give another example of environmental noise. Yes, Ms. McGuire. Okay, that is correct. Another one. Yes, Miss Magna. Okay, that is also correct. Correct. So very good class. So the next is psychological noise. So this noise can be considered an internal noise or interference. So attitude, behavior, an emotional state like sadness, anger, stress. It may cause one person not to understand what the other is saying. So also daydreaming is an example of this type. So next is the physiological noise. So this is a type of noise that refers to the physical conditions like deafness, blindness, or having any other conditions like that of a cleft palate or nasal. So the last type of noise is the cultural noise. So the differences in cultural can be an hindrance to a good communication. So for example, class. So it is okay to slur when eating noodles or sipping soup here in the Philippines or on the US. So if it is considered rude to slur for Filipinos, it is rude not to slur in Japan. So did you understand class? Our lesson, which is the process of communication. Okay, so if you really understand the lesson, who can give all the elements of the process of communication? Without looking on your book, and looking at the board. Yes, Miss Balaringo? Okay, seems you really understand our topic. So again, class. So, what do you mean by channel in the process of communication? Anyone? Yes, Miss Magnaye? Very well said. So how about the two categories of noise? Who can give the two categories of noise? Yes, Mr. Aguila. Okay, very good. So what do you mean class by the noise? Yes, Mr. Lentino. Finally, I can hear your voice now. Okay, that is very good. So class, do you have any questions regarding our topic, process of communication? Okay, none. So for our next activity, same group from our first activity. So for the mechanics, you will show all the elements of the communication process in terms of acting. So each member should act the role given by your leader. So for example, member one will act as the sender. So he or she must act like sending a message. So so forth. Okay, did you get the class? So you can use any materials as your props. So there will be a minus points for those who will miss any of the 8 elements. So I'll give you 10 minutes to prepare. You understand class? Okay, so you will now proceed on your preparing your performance. Okay, time is up class. Group 1, please proceed on the front and show your performance. Okay, very good. Group 2, your turn. Okay, thank you, group 2. Group 3. Where's group 3? Okay, group 3, please proceed to your performance. Okay, thank you, group 3. You're really enjoying your activity, no? Okay. Okay, class, so give yourselves a round of applause. So from what I saw from your performances, it seems that you really understand the process of communication. No one missed any part or any elements in your performances. So, okay, class, let us proceed now to short quiz. Okay, so proceed to your proper seats, class. Okay, so class, please get 1/2 sheet of paper to write your name, section, and the date today. And write 1 to 10. So our short quiz is a true or false. So write T if the statement is correct and F if the statement is wrong. So you have to analyze what I said, if it is wrong or right. Just write the T if it is wrong and if it is right, and F if it is wrong. Understand class? Okay, number 1. The feedback is the component of communication process that refers to the method or mode by which a source sends or transmits the message. I repeat, the feedback is the component of communication that refers to the method or mode by which the sender or the source sends or transmits the message. Okay, number 2. Psychological noise is the type of noise that refers to physical conditions like deafness, blindness, or having another condition like cleft palate or nasal. I repeat. Psychological noise is the type of noise that refers to physical conditions like deafness, blindness, or having any condition like cleft palate or nasal. Okay, number three. Feedback is the response or reaction or for or the receiver to the message sent to him or her by the sender. I repeat. Feedback is the response or reaction or the receiver of the message to the sent to him or her by the sender. Number four, encoding is analyzing or interpreting and converting a coded message. I'll repeat. Number four, encoding is analyzing, interpreting, and converting a coded message. Okay, number five. The channel is the component of communication that refers to the method or mode by which source sends or transmits the message. I'll repeat. The channel is the component of communication that refers to the method or mode by which a source sends or transmits the message. Okay, number six class. Syntax refers to grammar, structure, or set of rules that govern how words are combined in meaningful phrases and sentences. I repeat. Syntax refers to grammar, structure, or set of rules that govern how words are combined in meaningful phrases and sentences. Number seven. It is the sender who decodes the message. I'll repeat. It is the sender who decodes the message. Okay, number eight. The difference in culture can be a hindrance to communication. I'll repeat. The difference in culture can be a hindrance to communication. Okay, number nine. The receiver is the person who encodes the message. I'll repeat. The receiver is the person who encodes the message. Okay, last one. The sender cannot be a receiver. I'll repeat. The sender cannot be a receiver. Okay, are you done, class? Okay, so please pass your paper. Miss Salazar, kindly collect all the papers. So class, for your assignment, so write a short dialogue story. So you may choose different genre you want, but all the elements of the communication must be used on the dialogue story. So your dialogue story will be written on a short bond paper. Okay? Do you understand, class? Do you have any questions? Okay, so that will be the end of our today's discussion. So before we end our class, let us pray. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So praise be Jesus Christ. Okay. Thank you, class. Goodbye and God bless.